Okay, so we're back here. We've moved from the actual pump station, coming in between both the motors. This is the generator bay. We're going to find the check valve, which is a little bit of a challenge for you. So I'm going to have the camera go around to the other side. And you're going to come down to the base so that you can able to see this. Nice and slow. Steady, steady, steady. Now, it's going to be up under the bulkhead, and it's a little bit of a challenge to get to. That valve is right back here on a red handle. So now back off so you can see where I'm at a little bit, please. Back up so they can see where I'm at in relationship to the thing. Okay, so I'm basically in the center. Okay, now slowly come forward. And you'll see where my hand is. The tips of my finger are on the red check valve. It was currently open, so the last time it was out, they were drawing off of that tank. I'm going to close that valve, and now it will draw fuel for the toy tank, for the tank that's underneath the transom, which you can't see. So again, when you run out of fuel from the pumping station for the PWC, you have a second tank. You'll have to come back into the center bay, reach deep in the center, and you'll see the check valve. It's right on the top of their center fuel tank. Okay, so that's it on the PWC toy tank. The next thing I want to talk about is this switch here is also fuel related, and same bay, still with the generator. It's right over here on the starboard side of the bay. You'll see a valve that says port and starboard. This controls the two main tanks. So the starboard engine runs off of this tank, and the port engine runs off of the tank that's on the other side of the boat. It's right over there underneath. And you can see it right there. Thank you. Okay, so what I do when I'm out, and I recommend you do the same thing, you're on your 7-day trip, midpoint of the trip, whether it's day 3 or 4, it's up to you. I come back here and I switch this valve from one tank to the other so that the generator will draw fuel from the other tank. I never want to deplete either of the two tanks completely of fuel. It's doubtful that you would do that, but I wouldn't want to take the chance of not getting back. There are members or owners that go fairly far up lake. I think Luke Harrison is probably the guy that goes the furthest, and he sometimes goes to San Juan. They're on a 9-day trip. So certainly for him, he's got to be very cognizant of not running down one tank. So again, midpoint in your trip, come back here, open that bay up, and just flip that switch. Doesn't matter which way it is, it's just going to feed fuel into the generator from the other tank. Okay, so while we're here, let's cover the generator. If you can move up over there.
Yep.
The generator you can access here. Since we're having to do all the things ourselves as owners, Antelope Point Marina is not going to do anything unless we specifically request it. Every owner is now going to be responsible for checking the oil, so I want to cover that real quickly. Again, this is the center bay, this is the generator. The yellow stick, it says engine oil right on it. You pull that out, take a rag, wipe it down. You can see the hash marks on it. This is full, and that's add. When you get past this, you know that you need to add oil. If it's down here, it needs a quart of oil. That represents 1 quart of oil. So if you're up here, it's not a problem. If you're down here, do not leave the marina without getting oil added. We're generally pretty good about keeping this up on oil changes, so it's doubtful that this would ever need oil, but it's your responsibility to check it before you leave. Before you even start either engine, you're going to do the same thing. So the only fuel that you'd have to, or fluid you have to worry about is coolant. And this is the coolant bottle for the generator. As long as that's up here, at least halfway or better, you're good to go. No concerns there. The rest of this is pretty much problem-free. There have been times that folks have had problems with this getting hot and shutting down. Typically what happens is, if you can come up over here, just look down, straight down over here. This is a heat exchange. So you've got cold water that's picked up off of the bottom of the boat, comes up in heat exchange here and goes through here, and that does nothing more than cool the coolant. This is a closed cooling system. It doesn't have any water going through it. It only cools with antifreeze. So all that antifreeze is floating through here, but it also comes down here, dips down, gets cooled out by cold water, and then back up. What happens is this will get clogged. In other words, the line that feeds out of the lake, you get back into an area that's got a lot of murky water. It's got weeds and just basically debris that we've all seen floating on the water. When you get in those environments, you got to be very concerned about blocking the access for the pickup with that debris, because what happens is it gets sucked up into the motor and it clogs up here, and then you're stuck with a generator that doesn't run because it goes into a safe mode. It gets hot and it shuts itself down. There's virtually nothing you can do after it happens. It's very difficult to get cleaned out. It's not impossible, but it's difficult. I'm not advocating anybody try and do that. And it's going to be a service call at that point, which is going to cost you money. So my point in this conversation is to make sure that you check the strainers that bring that water from the lake into the boat, and do that regularly, especially if you decide you're going to go up into one of these canyons where there's a lot of debris in the water. That canister is right here. I'm going to have you view that in a second. You can come all the way around, please. This is the pickup for that. This is one of two canisters. There's one on this side and there's one over there. You'll see a cockpit on the back side of it here. It's a yellow handled cockpit. It's probably very hard to see. You can come around and reach up underneath here. Right, yeah, I'm sorry. Right. Can you see it from there?
Yep.
Okay, so this cockpit right here, you have to close this. This is a water pickup. That has to be turned up. If you don't shut that off before you try and open up this strainer, you're going to flood the back of the boat with water. So once it's closed in the up position, you rotate this off center, and then you can unscrew this. Hang on here. This is unscrewed by hand. Well, unfortunately, it's sitting there for all season. This should not be that tight. They'll be in here to service this boat here in a couple of weeks, but this is normally something you can get free by hand. It doesn't have to be that tight. Sometimes people get a little bit anxious because they're worried about leaking. This is unscrewed. You take that strainer out, flush it out, clean it, make sure there's no debris in there. It's got antifreeze in it right now so it doesn't freeze over. But you bring it back over then, once you screw that cap back on, bring it over here so that it can't fall down, it can't fall off. Open that check valve back up. Do not forget to open that check valve, because you're going to overheat an engine if you do. Visually is all it takes to inspect this. It's pink right now because it's full of antifreeze. It would normally be clear with water, clear water. And you can see when there's debris in there, it's very obvious. So if it's clear to you and you don't see anything, don't worry about it. Go about your business. But there's one here, there's one behind me for the other motor. There's also one in the center of the boat that's underneath by the actual, it's an HVAC system. There's in the center of the boat, you'll find two pumps. If you're up in those kind of areas, then you're going to have to be cognizant of that and check them periodically. The one in the center of the boat is a challenge to get to, but again, that's the price you pay if you want to get up into those canyons and hang out where there's a lot of debris. If you're out in the open waters, you don't have that concern. All right? We're going to take a break, and we'll come back to you about the motors.